Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today we're taking a look at Jordan Peterson versus 20 Atheists Jubilee debate. Now, as you guys know, I've got the chance to meet Jordan Peterson. I've done a podcast with his wife. I did a little interview with Jordan Peterson. You've probably seen the clips of that somewhere. But I'm not going to ramble on too long. We're going to take a look at this. I've been seeing videos of Jordan Peterson allegedly getting cooked by these atheists. Now, this is an hour-long video. I'm not going to watch the whole thing. Basically, just kind of watching the highlights. So we skipped ahead a little bit, but yeah, let's hop right into it.
How you doing?
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
I guess since you said morality and purpose cannot be found in science, it would just depend on like what you're referencing. If you're saying a description of your psychological preferences would be considered within science, sure. But I don't think that you have to say that it comes from science in order to be like an atheist. As an agnostic atheist, I don't know if God exists and I don't believe that a God exists. And the only ones that I would really reject would be like the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good, perfect notion of God that plenty of Christians like prescribe themselves. So I guess
How is that relevant to this claim?
You're basing a position of morality and purpose in some like notion of God that isn't the same type of notion of God that typical Christians would prescribe. Your notion of God is
what typical Christians?
Yeah, typically when I talk to Christians, they say that they believe in an all-knowing.
How about Cardinal Newman, who defined God as conscience? He has a major influence on all of Catholic social theory. How about that Christian?
Sure. So do you believe in the all-knowing, all-powerful, all-good notion of God?
What do you mean by believe?
Do you think it to be true?
That's the circular definition.
What? Sorry, did Jordan Peterson just say, what do you mean by believe? What do you mean, what do you mean by believe? Isn't that like, believe, what? Like, Jordan Peterson always kind of does this thing where, like, he like, kind of muddies the waters. Like, he kind of, like, complicates it. Like, I don't know, it's almost like he tries to dig so deep. Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by what do you mean believe?
What do you mean when you say you believe?
How is that circular?
Because you added no content to the answer by substituting the word true and believe.
I said you think it to be true.
All right. So if you believe something, you stake your life on it.
What do you mean by that?
You live for it and you die for it.
See, even the soy boy was confused. What?
That's what I mean by that. Isn't something...
So to believe something, you have to die for it. So I believe that I'm going to make it on YouTube, but I have to, like, die? Like, what?
Something that you say, it isn't something that's associated with logical consistency. It's not declarative. It's not propositional. It's not a figment
Even the guy in the back's laughing at him.
It's the presupposition of your attention and your action. And you're either fragmented, in which case you worship multiple gods, or there's some unity at the bottom of it that makes you an unstoppable force.
Okay, so you're saying that you don't believe something if you wouldn't die for it?
Really? No.
Okay.
So, wow.
How do you define belief?
So I believe that I'm talking into this webcam right now, but if I'm not willing to die for that belief, that means I don't truly believe I'm talking to this webcam, and I'm talking to all you people right now. Wow. That's interesting. That's very interesting.
Something you say?
Can I explain? Like, I could believe it is the case that this pen exists, but if someone like threatened my life, right, I would lie in order to be able to save my life, right? Like, I think you would do that too. You wouldn't lie to save your life.
Don't be so sure.
You wouldn't lie to save your life.
What?
How much do you know about me? I didn't lie to save my career. I didn't lie to save my clinical practice.
Well, some would argue that you did lie to save your career when you joined the Daily Wire. Now you can't talk about certain issues. I'm not going to go into what those certain issues are, but there's certain things that Ben Shapiro doesn't want you to talk about. So, in a sense, you are kind of lying for your career, in a sense there.
Would you lie to like save your children, your mom, your dad?
I don't think lying would save them.
No, can there ever be a circumstance logically that lying could save someone?
Yeah, and if you're steeped in sin, you're likely to live in circumstances like that.
I'll give you an example. If you're like in like Nazi Germany, and it is the case that there's like Jewish people in your attic, and you're trying to protect them, would you lie to like the Nazis?
I would have done everything I bloody well could, so I wouldn't be in that situation to begin with.
Well, what if you're just born in Nazi Germany? Like, he's trying to act like it would be like sinful to be in that situation.
Hypothetical, and it's
you
not
can't answer
answerable.
hypotheticals?
No, I can't answer a hypothetical like
What?
that because
Did
it's
you eat
far.
today?
Look,
Did you eat
don't
today?
play games.
I'm not playing a game. I'm just
Yes,
asking if
you
you
are.
ate it.
If you present me with an intractable moral choice that's stripped of context and you back me into a corner, you're playing game. I just told you
Hypothetical?
I would do everything that I could to make sure that I'm never in that situation. By the time you've got there, you've made so many mistakes that there's nothing you can do that isn't a sin.
Being born in Nazi Germany and
Oh,
trying
what?
to people that you care about, like there could be a Jewish friend that you have, and you want to protect them.
I think you should
have
just
them in
give
your
up on
attic.
that line of questioning.
Give up on
What?
trying to clarify your position. Because
I
you don't
did
like. Are you like
clarify.
uncomfortable with me asking this question? It's just a basic hypothetical. Like I could ask
It's
you.
just a
did you-
basic
yeah, yeah.
hypothetical
Like, you
where you
if
put Jews' lives at stake in Nazi Germany. That's just a basic hypothetical.
Obviously, you would lie in that scenario to save their life, but you're like not trying to answer this question for some reason.
I just
See, he's acting like that's somehow like a confusing question. It's a pretty straight up yes or no. Would you lie to save your family? I mean, yeah. But he's trying to make it like, well, I'll never be in that situation because you see, I can't answer. Like, holy smokes! Like, why are we over confusing this? It's just a big word salad.
told you why.
Are you anti-fascist? Like, so you're
Why
anti-fascist?
are you asking that?
I was just asking, just clarifying. But like, okay, again, you're not answering this hypothetical because you know it shows that you clearly would lie to save
I'm
someone's life.
answering it in
Obviously,
a
that's
manner
not
you
what truth
don't
is.
find acceptable.
Obviously, because I care about truth.
I wouldn't be in that scenario.
Obviously, right? Logically, because that
No.
already happened. Like that's in the past. You don't have a time travel device.
But even the soy boy is like, what are you talking about? Even the soy boy is confused.
We're bringing this logical hypothetical up to show you that in some circumstances that do happen within the real world, you would lie to save people's lives. So your definition of truth isn't actually how we're typically using it. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to muddy the waters when I ask you, like, do you believe this? Do you think this to be true? So you don't actually have to answer the questions. And plenty of Christians don't like that because they clearly see that you don't really like want to be associated with
I can
Christianity with that
imagine
respect.
that I was in a situation where the best I could do as a consequence of my previous mistakes was to tell the least amount of lie I could manage. But that would likely indicate that I had made all sorts of catastrophic errors on my way there.
So
Right.
you would lie to save someone's life. So again, you do believe it to be true in that circumstance, even though you like lied in that scenario. So
Not
clearly that's
without
not what
the
you see to be true.
context that I put it in.
You were not willing to
I
die for it.
said-
You were not willing to let other people die for it. So that's not what you see to be true then, seemingly.
You're doing exactly
Wow.
what I said you were doing at the beginning of the
See,
conversation.
Jordan Peterson, like, I think he's a smart guy. He's supposed to be this huge intellectual, but why is he getting cooked by, like, these, like, bratty little frickin' soy boy teenagers? Like, what? How are these soy boys cooking you, Jordan?
You're generating an impossible, restricted, hypothetical with no precursors to back me into a
How's
corner.
it possible? Is there something contradictory about it? Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too.
Great conversation.
Yeah. My next claim is that everybody worships something, including atheists, even though they might not know it.
Oh, the soy boy's getting ready.
Hi,
Good work.
thank you.
Hi there.
I'm Zena. So I want to start off with like defining terms.
Yeah.
How do you define worship?
Prioritize.
Prioritize. So almost like having a preference over something other than the
It's a
other.
hierarchy of preferences.
Yeah.
And you use it to direct your attention.
Right.
So whatever you're attending to, you're worshiping.
Right. So I've kind of become a little bit familiar with your idea of like this value-laden hierarchy.
Yeah.
Right. And you kind of posit that at the bottom of this hierarchy, or you call it top or bottom, I
Yeah, right.
suppose. At the bottom of this hierarchy, this foundational priority in your life is going to be considered God.
That's
is that
right.
correct?
Yes.
Right. I'm trying to imagine a situation in which could there be that someone has a priority at their foundation that is different from someone else's?
Oh, definitely.
Right. So we can have different conceptions of God.
That's why we fight.
Right. So essentially, there's not one God, but there are multiple gods, and these gods exist in some realm of truth. It's true that this person has one God and it exists.
Yeah, probably better to think about it as multiple values, but that there's a hierarchy of values with something at the bottom.
Right. But at the
Or
bottom is
top.
God, and there
That's
are
a definition, yeah.
Yeah, so at the bottom is God, and
Yeah.
there can be multiple people with different conceptions of God, and they're each valid in being called God. So there are multiple gods that exist.
No, because just because you believe that there's another god doesn't mean there actually is another god. And more than likely, it's going to be a demon. Like, more than likely. I feel like I'm under the impression that a lot of people are worshipping what they think is God, but it's like polar opposite of God. I'm under the impression a lot of people are actually worshipping demons out here.
It depends on what you mean by valid. So far, so good, but it depends on what you mean by valid, because I would say that some foundational conceptions don't play out when they're implemented. So if you put the wrong thing at the foundation, you end up in hell, for example. That's what happens in totalitarian states.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're saying
So they're not all equal. Like all foundational principles are not equal, even though
Right.
they might be equally foundational. Right?
So what makes one kind of foundational tenet like better than another one?
That's an excellent question. Iterability. Imagine that you play a game with someone and you're a kid, and it's fun. So then you play again and again and again.
So
Well, then
repetition.
it's playability across multiple iterations. So then you have a friend, and a friend is better than having a game.
So-
right? So that's one. Breadth of application is another. So if it's just for me now, it's not as good as something that would be benefit to both of us across time.
Right. So we're explaining like characteristics that can be applied to like these types of like foundational values. But why is it that this iterability makes it better? And what does better mean?
Well, one hallmark of better is likely to be selected voluntarily. So
Right.
it's invitational.
Another descriptive kind of quality. So we're talking about characteristics that in some type of system with a goal, an output being like, we could maybe say happiness, right? Or some type of
Harmony.
harmony,
Yeah,
right?
that's better. Not
Base-
happiness precisely, because it's too short term.
Exactly. So as someone who is an atheist, right, I can explain that within a system, there are things that we can see as better or worse to meet this goal or meet this output. But what we're interested in, though, is what could make these things, regardless of any system, right?
Well, imagine that you set up a system and you implement it, and it produces the opposite results to which you intend. Oh yeah, that's not a good system.
Exactly.
Right, so the foundational principles are lacking because when you implement them, the game degenerates instead of moving towards the aim.
Right.
Okay,
So we're talking about
okay.
within a system. When we talk about something being moral, right, just absolutely moral, it means that without a system, right, this thing is simply moral with no reason. Like, stance independent, this thing is good. So I'm trying to figure out if such thing can exist. And if so, do you believe that these things are moral in of themselves, like self-evidently moral, or are they moral in accordance with the system?
I can't define them any more accurately than I already did, really.
Okay. In regards to morality, when we talk about the divine, when we talk about God and religion, these moral
just going in
tenets and
circles.
religion, right, and God exist as good because it is God, right? So it's self-evident, right? Without any kind of goal or output, this thing is good. So I want to figure out how.
There's an element of that that's true. So, for example,
Yeah, this is you just kind of go around in circles. I think the next person's going to be a lot more interesting though. Like this is the next one. I'm pretty sure is the big viral clip.
in the story of Job, Job is unfairly tortured in consequence of a bet between God and Satan. And so Job is emblematic of someone who's being hurt for no apparent reason. Okay, so Job's response to that is that he refuses to lose faith in himself, and he refuses to lose faith in the ultimate goodness of being. Okay, and those are axiomatic decisions. They're not exactly evidence dependent because he is suffering. There's an arbitrariness in that that's reminiscent of what you claim.
So I'm essentially trying to figure out, do you believe that something can be good, like stance independently, something that can be good?
I don't know what you mean by stance independent.
Okay, so
you
I
mean
mean-
independent of people?
Independent of people, we can use that, or more so, I want to be more specific. Something that can be good, right, regardless of any end goal. It's just good.
No, I think good is tied up with goal.
Goal, okay, I completely agree. So, in a sense, this is why.
That's why the religious goal in Christianity is the establishment of the kingdom of heaven on earth. It's goal dependent.
Okay, right.
So it's in reference to a goal.
So,
Or the goal would be the
but
imitation of Christ.
someone's goal, right, can be something that doesn't encompass being in congruence with God or being with God.
No,
Can
the
that be
thing
true?
that they want to be in
Oh,
congruent.
right, okay,
Hang
it
on
is
a-
God.
That's right. That's
Sorry,
right. That's
I
right. That's
corrected
good. That's
myself.
great. The thing they want to be in congruence with is fundamentally equivalent to their God.
So what makes someone a Christian and what makes someone not a Christian? What makes like that's what I'm trying to figure out because
That's a good question.
yes.
Yeah, well,
Thank you.
probably the deepest answer to that is willingness to shoulder your cross voluntarily and trudge uphill regardless of circumstances.
Okay, so someone can have a God because in your definition, your first preference, that is God, right? So someone can believe in God, right? And not be a Christian, right?
Yeah, well, there's a statement that Christ makes in the Gospels. He says, not everyone who says, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven.
So not that they're even saying
Wow. So Jordan Peterson says that, but then later on says he's not even a Christian. Guys, are we serious? What are you talking about?
believe in God, but they
I
just
know, but that's why I'm saying this to you, is that Christ himself points out that there's a difference between people who say they believe and people who act it out. And the fundamental issue is the action rather than the stated belief.
But he also says that, to be saved, right, you must believe God has died for your sins, or that God has resurrected in some way. So it's like, I don't necessarily think that we can take from the Bible and say that, like, acting in accordance with God necessarily means, or acting in accordance with, the principles of God, like, for example, sacrifice, like you talk about, means that you are Christian. I don't see how you can get that from that interpretation and then, kind of justify it as the true
I don't
interpretation.
think that the fact that you sacrifice is sufficient to make you Christian.
So can we repeat once again what you believe makes someone Christian?
There's many things, but one of the most fundamental is that you believe that the cosmos itself is founded on the
Yeah, they're
principle of
voting her out.
voluntary self-sacrifice. Best founded. Let me offer you a contrary example. So I could assume that power rules. And so that my assumption would be, if I can make you do it, I win. Right, and I can found a whole society on that, and that happens a lot, by the way. And that's also how societies tend to degenerate. And so that would be a society that was founded on the principle that you get to sacrifice and I don't have to. Right, now the contrary to that would be something like you give up voluntarily and with courage all the things you need to situate yourself properly in relationship to the future and other people. Right. So then there's a harmony. That's why I talked about harmony earlier.
So you navigate your life, right, in accordance kind of to this principle of self-sacrifice. Can I say it in that way?
Yes, you can
Right.
definitely say it that
Thank
way.
you.
That's exactly right. And
Right.
navigate is the right term.
So someone does not have to have any awareness of Christ, of the story of Jesus, but let's say 60% of their actions, right, or more, whatever kind of metric you want to use, are in line with this self-sacrificial.
So the Christian thinkers of the Middle Ages dealt exactly with that problem when they were talking about the pre-Christian philosophers, for example. And they noted the similarity, let's say, between pre-Christian Greek thought and later Christian thought, and presumed that there were moral actors outside the Christian domain.
Right.
They're
So is that
addressing
person
the
Christian,
same-
though? Is that person Christian?
Well, to some degree, again, that's a matter of definition, because
Exactly.
they wouldn't be proclaiming Christian propositions, but they're acting out the pattern.
Of
Right? So,
Christianity.
so you imagine that full Christianity would involve a dozen things. And you can imagine someone who knows nothing of Christianity, say, acting out 8 of them.
Right.
Right.
So
then they'd be 8/12ths Christian or something like
8/12
that.
Christian.
Well,
but to be like a full Christian, how can someone say I am
Yeah, she's getting
Christian?
voted
Like
out.
I am Christian, not 8/12ths, but Christian.
Well,
I understand.
I hesitate to do that personally because
Okay.
I think it's the kind of goal that you be very careful about proclaiming. The technical.
But belief is not necessarily, to be mostly Christian, belief is not necessary. 8/12ths or, right?
Well, it depends on what you mean by belief. See, because I would say that acting out the pattern is the deepest form of belief. Now, you could add to that what you say. So, maybe in the optimal situation, how you act
And how you say
and what you imagine and what you say, they're the same. Right? But you can imagine a hypocrite who says all sorts of wonderful things and does nothing, and you could imagine another person who acts in a very positive manner but proclaims nothing.
So
right?
what I'm kind of seeing is like a descriptive, a really comprehensive but descriptive analysis of human action, human thought, and by which we can characterize people and put people in boxes. But I don't see,
Why in boxes?
like, when I say in boxes, I mean like I can categorize you based on your actions, not based on necessarily what you say, but based on your actions that you are more so or less so Christian, right? Things like that, right? So we can categorize people as Christian.
Well, I would say more or less voluntarily self-sacrificing.
But that's also what we came to, though, is that someone can be like 60% or 70% Christian based on simply just acting in that
Yeah,
way.
Richard Dawkins is like that.
I watched that debate.
Let's pause there. We've been voted out by the majority.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Really, very thoughtful.
Sheesh. Oh, the soy
Hey, Dr.
boy
Peterson.
wins.
How you doing?
Danny, nice to meet you.
What's your name?
Danny the
Danny.
soy
Danny.
boy.
You say atheists worship things or people or places, whatever. Can you be very clear about your definition of worship again?
Attend to, prioritize, and sacrifice for.
Okay, that's it. That's your understanding of worship.
Well, I could flesh it out, but that'll do for the time we have.
Okay. Do Catholics attend to Mary?
Yes.
Okay. So do they fit that description of worship?
Yes.
So you would say Catholics and other people that revere Mary, like the Eastern Orthodox tradition, worship Mary.
Well, they might not put her in the highest
But you would put
place.
it that way.
No.
The soy boy's getting lit over there.
You just said it. Now you're taking it back
There's
now?
still a hierarchy.
Okay, there's a hierarchy, but within
And
the
there's something at the top.
All right, you can worship things
Mary
below.
is quite a ways up the hierarchy, but not at the top.
Let's go over your definition of worship again. What's your definition of worship?
Attend to,
Attend to. Do
prioritize, and
Catholics
sacrifice for.
what do Catholics attend to? Do they prioritize Mary over all other human beings?
No, I didn't say overall, did I? I didn't
Well,
add that to my definition.
you understand.
I said there was a hierarchy as well.
You attend to
So you can
Catholic.
attend to something trivially, or you can attend to it deeply.
Okay, now
there's
you're
a-
adding stuff to the definition, but your original
I
definition.
added the hierarchy part at the beginning.
Are you
just
familiar?
didn't understand it.
Are you familiar with the Immaculate Conception?
Why is that relevant?
Because you go to a Catholic church, don't you? Or you've attended recently. You're interested in Catholicism, aren't you?
Sure,
All right. Are you familiar with their doctrines?
somewhat.
Okay, you're
Their
familiar.
doctrines are
how
very
do they
deep.
regard Mary?
Why are you asking me that?
Because you're a Christian.
Ooh.
You say that. I haven't claimed that.
Oh, what is this? Is this Christians versus atheists?
I don't know.
You don't know where you are.
Oh
right
my.
now.
Don't be a smartass.
Well,
and I mean
either
it,
you're a
'cause
Christian
I won't
or you're
talk to
not.
you if you're a smartass.
Oh, either you're a Christian or you're not. Which one is it?
I could be either of them, but I don't have to tell
could be-
you.
You don't have to tell me. I was under the impression
private.
I was invited
Wow.
to talk to a Christian. Am I not talking to a Christian?
No, you were invited to.
I think everyone should look at the title of the YouTube channel. You're probably in the wrong YouTube video,
You're really quite something. You are.
aren't I? But you're really quite nothing, right? You're not a Christian.
Okay, I'm done
Oh
with you.
my god. How did Jordan Peterson go from like being like the grandfather of like conservatism and being base? How did he go from that to getting cooked by soy boys? How are you gonna let this guy sit down and tell you, oh, you're quite nothing, aren't you? This guy's a soy boy. Jordan, like how's Jordan Peterson getting cooked by these people? Wow. Like, no, this guy should not be happy. This guy should be leaving frickin' in tears. This guy should not be laughing of tears. Like, what are we doing? And that's the thing. This is what it looks like. That's what it looks like when somebody can't say certain things. When somebody works for somebody, and we're on YouTube, so I'm not going to go too far, but when somebody works for somebody and can't necessarily say what they mean all the time. You know, almost like they're on a bit of a leash. That's kind of what this looks like right now. But guys, I'm going to end it here. God bless you guys. Thank you all for watching. Smash the subscribe button if you're new. Smash the like button. Take care, everybody, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye, everybody.